Hello again, Chase the Traveler with a new episode. Alright, you want to know this. You come to Japan, should you be flashy? Should you wear the best clothes? Should you have a nice fancy car? Should you show off at work with your latest gadget? The latest model computer? Well, do it at your own risk. I've got a few stories to tell. Let me tell you, when I first came to Japan, I had no money in my pocket. Couldn't buy a camera. Back then there were no cell phones. I learned pretty quickly that, of course, you want to be dressed nicely, but you don't want to be the best dressed. I mean, one time I remember I had worked for a couple months. Sony had a camera / computer. I mean, the computer, I mean, it wasn't really like a computer like an iPhone, but it was like a camera. And it kind of like had some computer-like things in it. But back then, that was it. It was like the bomb. So I went over there and I purchased it. Now, it wasn't as much as a car, of course. Went to work, took it out. Now, my boss, who was Japanese at the time, looked at me like, and I kind of felt like, oh my goodness. I knew that look. It was that look of like, argh. So, I kind of learned pretty quick that when you buy things that are expensive, you can't really enjoy it outside of your own home. Or you can actually enjoy it with people that you don't know, that have no influence over you. And I would say that, well, because it was something that I could put in my pocket, I quickly learned that in Japan you kind of have to be normal, meaning you have to do what everybody else is doing. Because if you stick out, you get hammered. And that's kind of like a proverb in Japan. Another thing that I saw was that, I had a friend. Now this guy, he was from New York also. This was back in the late 80s, early 90s. This guy was a ladies' man. He used to hang out a lot in Shinsaibashi. And a lot of people used to see him with women. He was working at one of the nightclubs as a DJ. So he had a lot of access to a lot of ladies. And he wasn't really being all that discreet about it. And because he wasn't being all that discreet about it, people paid attention. Now, what happened to him was he bought a Harley Davidson. Now, in Japan, you could usually tell the difference between like a Japanese-made motorcycle because they look sporty. And then you've got like the US-made motorcycles that don't look as sporty, but like a Harley looks like antique. I mean, it makes you look cool. I mean, the Japanese motorcycles make you look cool also, but you just got to wear like some type of suit to go with it. So now, I mean, I was impressed by the Harley. Of course, he was impressed by his Harley. And he had a lot of ladies on the back of his Harley. But what happened then was that little by little, his Harley started getting scratched. I mean, it was like one scratch, all right, two scratches. All of a sudden, his Harley was like all scratched up, and it wasn't something that was. It wasn't something that was, let's say, that happened naturally. People were just scratching his stuff up because it was, not only are you flashy, you're a foreigner, you're walking around with a lot of women, now you've got a Harley. And you're parking where people who don't like you know about it. So pretty much, I don't know what happened to the Harley, but I mean, for a new Harley with all those scratches, it wasn't looking all that cool anymore. And, you know, one thing that, again, you're going to notice this about Japan is that a lot of people, like I said, you know, Japan, everybody's middle class. Nobody wants to stick out. And you, as the foreigner, you already stick out. So now, you look like you have a whole bunch of stuff. And you've got a Harley, so now you're sticking out some more. So a lot of people are not going to let you live properly. So in Japan, no. You shouldn't be too flashy. And I mean, I knew this one guy. Now this guy was I forget what his name was, but he was from Australia, and I think he was like a regular English teacher. But the thing with him is that he didn't know how to use his money properly. I mean, me, I was like saving my money. Him, he was like spending his money. One day he showed up with the Rolex. I'm like, what? I mean, back during the bubble, everybody had money in Japan, and you know, Rolexes were not really all that uncommon. But Japanese people weren't used to seeing foreigners with Rolexes. So he showed up with a Rolex. And he always had a suit on. I mean, you know, I'm like, dude, man, you're just an English teacher. Why do you have a suit on for? Some of them were expensive, and he was coming to work, and you know, all the students were like loving him. Little by little, what do you think happened? Obviously, our boss wasn't running around with a Rolex, and he was the boss, so he's supposed to be making more money than you. He didn't have a Rolex. And he didn't have the nice suits, because I mean, this guy, basically, he was using his money. His apartment wasn't really all that nice. I mean, but he was kind of like, all his money was basically on him. His suits, his watch. Of course, he wasn't going to lose his job because he came to work with a Rolex, or he was wearing nice suits. But, and not only that, he had, he had some, you know, he was pretty popular too. But, what do you think was going to happen? Well, of course, he didn't have a job for very long. I mean, after he got the Rolex, pretty much he started to have less and less hours. And pretty soon, you know, he didn't have a job. So, and of course, the reason wasn't going to be because he had a Rolex and he was flashing. He was wearing suits when he didn't have to. No. They found some other reason to let him go. I forget what it was, but no. Japan is not the kind of place where you want to outdress your boss. Or if you live like in a neighborhood where the motorcycles are kind of, if the motorcycles aren't that expensive, you don't want to have an expensive motorcycle. Your boss has, no. Your watch has to be cheaper than what the boss is wearing. If you have a gizmo, like I had my little camera slash mini computer that wasn't really a computer, but I learned real quick that whenever I went to work, I had to be humble. I couldn't make it look like I had more, even though I was making good money. I had to make it look like I never had any money. Always complaining, oh man, everything in Japan is so expensive. Oh my goodness, I can't, I can't survive. The Japanese love that. As soon as you go in saying, oh, well, you know something, yeah, I'm making a lot of cash. I'm going to buy my new Rolex. I think I'm going to buy a Harley Davidson. No. I'd like to buy a new scooter, but it's so expensive, I'm going to get a used one. That's what works in Japan. The rent is so expensive. I don't know what to do. I'm not making enough money. The Japanese will love you for that. As soon as you come around having more money than them, as soon as you walk around or drive around with the latest tech, the best clothes, a really nice car, you better make sure that car is gated in somewhere where nobody can get access to it. Because as soon as you look like you're doing well as a foreigner, you're going to have some problems. I do not advise you going to Japan in looking your best. What I mean by looking your best, I don't advise you to go to Japan and go to work with like fancy clothes, designer clothes. No. Now, if you own the business, sure. If you don't, no, don't do it. You want to buy a Harley Davidson? Or you want to buy a Mercedes Benz or BMW? Don't do it. Don't do it. I mean, it might make you feel good, but it's not worth the headache. I mean, I'll tell you, when I had my little gizmo, something happened to me that, again, I can't say that it was because I had my little fancy gizmo and I was playing around with it in the staff room. I can't tell you that for sure. But the same day that people saw my gizmo, I had a problem getting into my locker. What I mean by a problem getting into my locker was I tried to open my locker. I had a key. I couldn't get in. Now, I was like, hold on a second, that's odd. because that morning I was able to open it up. But for some reason, when it was time to go home, I couldn't get my stuff out. Turns out that somebody had put crazy glue in the keyhole and just locked it up. Just locked it up totally. Now, I cannot tell you definitively that it was because I had a gizmo that nobody else had. I can't say that because I don't know who did it. But it's kind of odd that nobody was really happy for me and my gizmo. I was showing it around, which I shouldn't have done. And lo and behold, when it was time to go home, I couldn't go home. So I had to break the lock. So again, I'm not saying that that it had something to do with the latest high-tech gizmo that I had. But I think maybe it did. And most foreigners that I've seen here who become flashy start buying things, start having things that are a little expensive. Foreigners that are flashy, that go to the same place. You're definitely going to get harassed. You are most certainly going to get harassed. The Japanese don't like that. And like I said, you know, in Japan there's a proverb. And that proverb says, I think I mentioned it before, but I'll say it again. The nail that sticks out gets hammered. That means that if you're a nail and you stick out, and usually that means if you're flashy or if you're unusual, you're going to get nailed. You're going to get hammered. And the fact that you're sitting out there, the fact that you're sitting out and being flashy with the motorcycle or the fanciest motorcycle or a Giorgio Armani suit, you might get hammered, dude. So you might as well not even start that. And I learned that lesson real quick. Really, really quick. In Japan, you kind of, even if you're not going to fit in, you got to act like you're doing what everybody else is doing. You got to act like you're like everybody else. Now, you might be special, but you don't want anybody to know that you're special, because if they know that you're special, some people have nothing better to do than to basically harass you. So, I myself, I bucked the trend. I bought a Harley after a while when I was living in Japan. Now, because I knew what I was dealing with, that Harley was always covered up. Always. And you know, I kind of felt like I couldn't really enjoy the Harley because every time I parked it, I kind of had to wrap it up to make sure it was like difficult for people to actually know how I wrapped it. So every time it was kind of like a whole process just to uncover my Harley, just to take it out. So every time I went somewhere, I covered it up. And it was time consuming. extremely, extremely time consuming. But what can you do? That's just the way it is when you live in Japan. You kind of have to live by the rules of society. And the rules of society here says that you cannot be flashy. Now, I'm not just talking about Japanese people. I'm also talking about foreigners. I think Japanese people are kind of the same. You'll notice that even Japanese people who have money, they'll tell you they don't have money. You'll never get a Japanese person to tell you that they have money. But they do things to let you know that they do have money. So, now, I also don't want to give the impression that other societies don't do this, because I think other societies also do this. Especially if you worked hard, you want to indulge a little bit, you want to show people that you're a little bit, you want to show people the fruits of, your success. But half the time, when you start doing these things, you're getting the opposite effect. You're just getting some hate. So most certainly, I would say that it's not worth it. It's not worth it. You're better off keeping your success to yourself. You're better off not showing anybody the success that you've had, or the little bit of success that you've had. Because people are not going to appreciate it. So when I had my Harley, I loved it. Every time I uncovered it, I liked it. I rode it, I liked it. Did anybody else see me? No. Maybe a friend or two saw me. Did anybody around my neighborhood see me? I made sure they didn't. I didn't want anybody where I lived seeing that I had it. And if I was going somewhere, I usually parked where people didn't see me getting off of it. I didn't want anything to happen to it. So having a Harley was something that I kind of like, I enjoyed it myself, but I'm not sure that I really enjoyed it because of all the things that I had to do just to protect myself from the people that I thought were going to be against me. So sometimes it's kind of tough living in Japan. And maybe some of you might say, okay, something, you overdid it. You didn't have to do all that. Well, based on what I saw, I think I did have to do all that. And I can tell you that my Harley didn't get a scratch. And I never did buy an expensive watch. I never took, or when I went to work, actually I had a Vespa one time. A Vespa is like one of these little Italian scooters. They're pretty fashionable. Now, since I knew I was living in Japan, I took it to work, but I never parked where anybody can see me at work. So these are all the little things that you got to do when you live in Japan. What is going on here? Got a whole bunch of birds. So anyway, Chase the Traveler again with a new episode. Do me a favor, buy me a coffee. Become a member. Members get access to videos that haven't been released yet, and there are quite a few of those. If you want to consult with me, go right ahead. ChaseTheTraveler@gmail.com. Let me know. Thanks again. Bye-bye.